I'm not going to name them, are wanting to go down there and hire Mexican drivers and put them in American trucks and give them work visas. And then they can come up here and bring down the wages for the rest of us. I'm only making 60% of what I made before 2009 because I lost a good job when they went out of business.
Sure.
How much more of a hit does somebody like me need to take?
If, in fact, that were the case and we were made aware of it, like I said, I'll be the first one to put a funding prohibition to stop it.
Stop what?
Okay.
Stop the inspections down there, therefore they couldn't bring the trucks in.
Ah, okay. Well, you said something. Treaties are law. And in the Constitution, you said they're not law.
Well,
and
they serve as law. A treaty is excellent, yes.
It's at the level of its Constitution.
Right.
I mean, it is serious stuff. You cannot enter into a treaty lightly because all kinds of stuff gets extracted from that authorization.
Right.
I don't believe that you can rewrite the Constitution using the treaty, but all kinds of other kinds of mischief can occur. And how could a secretary guarantee that if you increase the supply of anything, it will diminish the cost and value of it? If thousands of new or hundreds of new workers come across the border, why wouldn't that automatically, by definition, increase the supply and lower the price of that labor?
Well,
that's in fact what it was intended to do.
What he was talking about was giving special visas for these drivers to be able to come in here, drive U.S. vehicles, and compete in the U.S. market for those jobs, and that will not happen.
Is it time to revisit the NAFTA as an entity? Because just because you have a treaty now doesn't mean you're consigned to it forever. You could revisit the language of it. You could revisit even its authorization. You could even decertify a previous treaty.
You can certainly. Obviously, NAFTA for the state of Iowa is a huge plus with hundreds for trade for hundreds of millions of dollars of annually of U.S. products going both to Canada and to Mexico. It is a huge plus for the state of Iowa. You know, having said that, I'm a real believer in free and fair trade and make sure that people are honoring their commitments, and that's my concern, say, with China, with the manipulation of their currency, things like that have a huge impact on trade that really are non-tariff trade barriers and put us in a very non-competitive situation.
This is Dan. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi, Dan.
Hello, Congressman. Congressman, I wanted to make you aware of it because I have a feeling you're probably not, but I've been working with a group of veterans to develop a transitional center for veterans coming back that might be suffering from PTSD and TBI or any combination of it. And this was going to be based on utilizing transitional funds from the VA. Well, we have just been notified that the Department of Veteran Affairs has set aside no longer funds the transitional fee. And I guess my concern is that all these veterans coming back from overseas right now, that we have just pulled this funding away from helping these people to transition back into society.
Well, first of all, Dan, thank you for what you're doing. There's no greater cause than helping the veterans coming back, and that are experiencing a lot of difficulties, and the great service that they've given to their country. We've got to honor that, and again, appreciate what you're doing to help them. I will have to look into whether the administratively that they've decided to discontinue that program. We will look into it. The funding stream, I will just tell you, and you're probably well aware that the VA is something that we do what we call advanced appropriation, so that every year the VA knows exactly how many dollars they're going to have available, that doesn't get caught up in some of these big budget battles, to make sure that the funding stream is there, because they basically get their appropriation amounts designated a year before that fiscal year ever goes into place. So it's not a matter of dollars going in, but if they're doing administratively something like this, I appreciate you informing me of it, and we will look into it.
Plus, you have the Obama administration shutting down USDA offices all over. They say have to. It's just the money isn't there. You're going to have to just start lopping away. You guys in Congress say you got to save money. Here's the way we're doing it. We're chopping on USDA offices.
And if in fact it's not needed out there, we should do it. The fact that it's interesting though that they're closing offices but not doing away with federal employees.
I don't understand how they do that.
Well, just because you don't have a physical office doesn't mean you still can't employ people. So they basically want to keep the same number of federal employees, but they're closing down the offices themselves. So there is some savings, obviously, with the infrastructure, but they don't want to reduce.
So these people are just sitting in parking lots now in their cars?
They'll probably have to drive another 20 miles to the other office.
Okay, got it. A brief time out, back in a moment on 1040 WHO.
Yeah, that's it.
Mickelson here with you. Later, we'll have some open line time. We were talking off the air about the current labor. We were talking about Labor Relations Board earlier, and I thought it was kind of urban legend or folklore, just silly extrapolation. But farm regulations about the family farm and the kids working on the family farm would fall under the jurisdiction of these varmints?
On the Department of Labor that has jurisdiction over child labor laws. But what they're doing is writing a new regulation, in essence saying that farm kids can't work in their family farm anymore. And especially if, say, your family is in partnership with your dad's brother or sister in an operation, or your grandfather has an interest in the operation, you could not work on that farm. It is just goes totally against anything that anyone. I mean, the greatest thing for me growing up as a kid was to go with my four brothers and go out, and if we're baling hay, whatever we're doing, but learning, getting responsibility, maybe going over to the neighbors and making a few extra bucks baling hay, something like that. This would all be stopped. Well, I've got a resolution. It's a bipartisan resolution with Dan Boren from Oklahoma to disapprove of this regulation, make it publicly known exactly where the Congress stands on it, and if we could get it through, I would put a funding prohibition in saying the Department of Labor can't enact a regulation like this, because it really shows how out of touch the bureaucrats in Washington are with the real world, and it just drives people crazy, and as well it should, because there is a tradition in agriculture. Everybody wants to keep kids safe, but the fact of the matter is it is the best opportunity to keep farm operations going. The legacy that we have is to have kids involved in the process and really learn responsibility and learn skills.
This is Brad. Good morning, Brad.
Morning.
Hi.
I want to say I appreciate everything Tom Latham's done and his views on things, but I don't believe he's going far enough. An example, I don't necessarily agree with all of Ron Paul's foreign policy, but he has all of the ideas.
All right, so he's asking you, it's time for you to put on some brass knuckles. It's time to get rid of the Iowa nice and start kicking butt.
Absolutely, and I think you're going to see this next Congress with a lot of bills going forward. The frustration I have, whether it's the budget or the legislation is piled up on Harry Reid's desk that can actually help the economy.
Many provisions of the new
Views expressed are those of the host, guests, and callers.